Hello, it's me in a forest wearing my what is fast becoming my please ask me for directions coat, because every time I wear it somebody asks me for directions and not once have I been able to provide them with any. Today we're going on a little jaunt through a forest because I think we all need it, and because I wanted to answer this interesting question that somebody asked me on Instagram: what do I think of manifesting? Now if you don't know what manifesting is, Vox describes it as the practice of thinking aspirational thoughts with the purpose of making them real. Like most things that profess to be new, it kind of combines the very simple practices of wishing and prayer and rebrands them as like a skill that you have to pay somebody to go on a course to do. But sometimes it's just like, you know, people will make videos about vision boards and how, like, because they put something on their vision board, like that's the reason it happened. Melanie Murphy did a great video kind of clarifying what she meant by vision boards and how like her opinions on manifesting have changed, so I'll link that below. But it is still like a thing that a lot of people kind of rave about or encourage people to do, so I think it's interesting for a number of reasons, and I thought I'd rant to you about why. So when it comes to manifesting as a practice, I don't really think I am for or against. I'm just like, it's complicated. As somebody who used to have a faith, grown up in a religious background, as I know a lot of you have that watch, I realised that I can laugh at this idea of manifesting, but actually I used to practice it quite sincerely. We called it prayer. And because predominantly the people I hung out with and saw every day and were related to were all within those circles, when I saw something good happening to somebody and correlated the fact that we had prayed for it, it had happened, I thought that that was the hypothesis was true. That proved the theory and it was happening. A good example of that, I guess, is like there was a few people in my community who were diagnosed with cancer. Everybody prayed for them and they lived. However, there were also people that we didn't correlate with who obviously died from an illness that we also prayed for equally. You know, when I think sometimes those things are overemphasized in faith-based communities as outliers and like proof that prayer works. And in the same way with manifesting, I think there are people who have naturally risen to the top of the manifesting field because it happens to be that what they wanted has been made manifest by somebody, not them, quite possibly even by chance. But because they are the most visible people in that field, we're like, obviously that works. In the secular world, not only were what it seemed like a similar amount of people surviving horrible illnesses as were being killed by them, raucous luck and ruin seemed to be equally distributed wherever I went. Like there weren't more people who were magically fertile after being diagnosed as infertile in the Christian community than there were outside of it. There weren't people with better jobs, more health, less problems. Yes, like faith-based communities can help people deal with those kind of problems, but the problems were equally distributed. And I think it might be the same with manifesting. This idea that you can pray bad luck away or choose the path you're on without accounting for the other people that are around you in the communities that you are in, well, just quite frankly, it doesn't make sense. A lot of the manifesting gurus and coverage of manifesting doesn't really account for very simple things like privilege and more ultimately chance. And that doesn't mean that I don't like making wish lists. You might remember that I made a 40 before 40 list, a list of 40 things I wanted to do before I was 40. I'll link the video up here. And I don't regret making that video. I made it before the pandemic. So watching it back, all I can think in my head is, oh sweet summer child. But I have actually achieved some of the things on that list, which got me to thinking, did the list have an effect on that? Seems like quite a high hit rate for the things that I got done on that list. But I think I can account for that in several ways. Like one, I was kind of already on the way to some of those things. They're things I just wanted to do. So I really set myself on a path where I was gearing towards some of those things anyway. But also I think the list helped, not because of what it included, but what it actually excluded. The things that were bigger in my life that I thought I was working towards, like, I don't know, being able to stay in London, meet various famous people that I no longer really care about meeting, get thin, all these things actually, when I sat down to make my list, didn't appear. And that was as useful to me as the stuff that did make the list. And I think sometimes when we talk about like vision boards and goal making and manifesting, it's actually what we choose not to focus on that is the most interesting, because I think sometimes we can default towards these things without realizing and making them a priority when they're simply just not. And while I think circumstance and privilege plays a huge part, as well as just like the fact that we are all inherently wrapped up in huge world events. Like, I'm not being funny, but I imagine the wonderful people who live in Ukraine also made vision boards, also had plans for this year, also had goals to achieve. And I think the attitude of like, that can't happen here, that can't happen where I am, where I'm living, is just like simply false. And that's a reality I've been sinking myself into for the past few years, that I'm like, anything like that could happen anywhere, and it's important to recognize that. If manifesting truly worked, then people would be able to stave off wars because they actually had a 5-year plan for their business, you know? And they're obviously silly exceptions, but I do think when we're encouraged to make goals like wild dreams that are outside of, like, without considering the context that we live in and what actually makes us happy and what our actual human body capacity is, it can get a little bit mad. And also, but I do agree with this idea of, I was watching this podcast with Ali Abdul, who was interviewing this mathematician guy, and he was talking about increasing the surface area of your luck. So he's like, okay, so if you go out and you meet 20 people a day that you've never met before and you ask them interesting questions, you're more likely to come across interesting people and interesting opportunities and interesting experiences than if you just stayed in your shed and made your one thing and then hoped at the end that somebody might like it and find it. I'll link it below, that's kind of the gist of it. And I do agree with that. I think that there are people who increase their surface area of things that could potentially happen to them, and knowing what you want to increase your surface area around, like what you're spreading yourself out or opening yourself up to, can have a long-term effect on how close you get to those goals you set for yourself. But it also just made me think about this book that I've just finished that I want to read to you from. Let's find a nice little reading nook. Oliver Burkeman is a anti-self-help writer I've loved for years. Like, if anybody is running this shit, hello? If anybody's driving this, then I think Oliver Burkeman's book, Help! Exclamation mark, would have been my set text. That would have been what I was set for my reading. He actually points out a similar conclusion I came to about this idea of using time and manifesting. This is his new book, 4,000 Weeks, which is how long we have to live. Good, good. Meltdown at the title, that's when you know it's a good book. But he says, most of us seek a special individualistic kind of mastery of time. Our culture's ideal is that you alone control your schedule, doing whatever you prefer whenever you want. Because it's scary to confront the truth that almost everything worth doing, from marriage to parenting to business or politics, depends on cooperating with others, and therefore on exposing yourself to the emotional uncertainties of relationships. Ooh. So when we talk about this goal setting thing, why aren't we manifest? If we're going to make a vision board, why are we making it on our own? You know what I mean? Why aren't we making them as groups? But he also has some advice that reminded me of this idea of manifesting, which actually I think does ring true. He talks about this guy Warren Buffett, who explained how he organizes time, and he describes this idea of middling priorities as something that is ambitions insufficiently important to him to form the core of his life, yet seductive enough to distract him from the ones that matter most. You don't need to embrace the specific practice of listing out your goals to appreciate the underlying point, which is that in a world of too many big rocks, it's the most moderately appealing ones, the fairly interesting job opportunity, the semi-enjoyable friendship, on which finite life can come to grief. So I think when we do goal set, or we do take on somebody else's practice of like how to organize our priorities in life, there is something good about just paying attention to what is actually a middling priority, and then if you don't recognize it as such, it can become like a core foundation of your life without you realizing. But the best revelation by far is on page 212, and it says, but what it's actually talking about, this concept of cosmic insignificance theory, the relaxing idea that probably a lot of what you do doesn't really matter ultimately. It matters to you, but it doesn't matter ultimately. And he says, you're free too to consider the possibility that many of the things you're already doing with time are more meaningful than you'd supposed, and until now you'd subconsciously been devaluing them on the grounds that they weren't significant enough. That was a big revelation for me, because there are lots of things that I believe I want to do but rarely find the time to do or get round to, and instead of thinking, God, I'm such a bad person, I never get round to that thing on my to-do list, or that goal, I never get round to it, start to interrogate whether it deserves a place on your goal list at all. Like, if I really wanted to play the piano, wouldn't I have done it by now? Wouldn't I? And the same with relationships. It's amazing, like, once you do have a big connection with somebody you're dating, you actually find all these weird pockets of time to see them that didn't like otherwise exist. And I found the same with YouTube when people talk like, oh, how have you been making YouTube videos for like 11 years? I'm just like, well, I just can't not. Like it's an accidental priority for me because it makes me so excited. And isn't that even better than having an intentional priority, is to have an accidental priority that you just can't resist doing? And isn't it relaxing to think maybe the people I'm already in touch with are the ones that actually secretly in my soul I really wanted to. They're the ones that I was meant to be in touch with. Maybe the people that I ended up with are the people that I was supposed to, because my brain prioritized them. My heart was just like, this has to happen. Maybe the hobbies or the careers that we have are okay. We don't need to improve them in this incredible way because we've already prioritized them, because we've got round to them. You know, they're already done. And isn't that a relief? So takeaways from this video, if there are to be any: if you must manifest, if you must vision board, make sure that you take into account some flexibility. I sometimes think that maybe I should be making goals around how I want to feel, like not exactly what I want to achieve or a number or like a certain award or thing, but like maybe just, why are there so many police cars today? Like maybe my goals should be stuff like, I want to have a daily routine that I feel is manageable. I want to have enough work to occupy me and it interests me and stimulate me, but not enough that I can't spontaneously go and see a friend in the evenings. I want to create something from scratch that I genuinely don't think has been made before. I want to live somewhere where I feel secure enough that whatever else goes on in my life, I have a little hub to go back to. You can't really cut that kind of thing out of a magazine and stick it to a cork board, but increasingly I'm starting to realize that maybe trying to second guess your future self and how you're going to achieve something, rather than just admitting that the achievement is like contentment or happiness and working out how to get there is the aim, rather than being like, these 5 things will make me happy, that's what's going on my vision board. And also that there are fallow periods in your life where you're just allowed to exist, and that's okay. I think I've got a few like questions when I've done interviews and stuff where people are like, so what's your 5-year plan, like blah blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, I used to have a 5-year plan, but I've done that now, and I kind of just want to have a few years off to just work really hard but just nebulously improve. Like I just want to get better at making videos and writing video essays and writing poems, and do you know what I mean? And you can't put that, you can't just be like, I just want to get better at something. Like, because that's not something that you can pass and fail at, but maybe that's okay as well. In summary, everything's going to be okay. Goals are meant to be achieved or scrapped. You can't fail at them, you just set the wrong goal. And if your manifesting is prayer or goal setting or simply just daydreaming, then it's good to focus on those things. It's good to immerse yourself in those things and hope for them, because it will reorientate how you direct yourself every day, and that's cool. But that's not magic, and it's probably not God, and it's definitely not manifesting. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want some videos on surviving your 20s, you can find that here. If you want some videos that were kind of similar to this one and I think you might like them, they're over here. Do subscribe. I would like to see you here again. Thank you so much to the Gumption Club for making these videos possible. Frog Snog out.